Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for taking just a few minutes today as I share with you this short video as we are in the middle of week 3 of the Chronological Bible reading. Last week was such a big transition for us as we were reading halfway or a long way through those first early chapters of Genesis and what is familiar to us in a very storybook fashion of reading through the Bible. And then we transitioned over to the book of Job, which, guys, is a very, very hard book. Job is not an easy book. A lot of people dodge the book of Job because it's so difficult. A lot of people start well in the book of Job and then bail out. And so I just want to ask you to stick it out this week. There's so much good going on in the book of Job. Last week, we kind of closed out that first look of life outside the garden, and we saw some incredible stuff as we saw that God was the one that brought Job to the attention of Satan, the enemy. And he said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And there's this kind of back and forth between God and Satan there. And God gives Satan permission for reasons that we don't understand, but we know because of Romans 8 that God intends him for the good of Job. And so we see that Satan does attack Job and literally changes everything about his life, from the things that he has to the way that he looks. His friends show up on the scene and they sit there, and the only time they're friendly to him is in their silence. But sadly, they begin to speak and say things to Job. And we kind of start this pattern that we see a lot this week of kind of this tit for tat, this back and forth between Job and his friends, between defense and self-righteousness, and I'm better than you, or you're better than me, or you're no better than us, and that sort of thing. And that continues for a while. One statement specifically that stood out for me last week as I read through Job chapter 10 was that Job really has already started decrying, wishing that he was no longer alive. We understand that. Job is walking through something really not of his own fault. And so Job says, "I wish I wasn't alive." He says that multiple times. But in chapter 10, Job makes this one statement. I believe it's verse 1 that really stood out to me. He says, "I'm going to give free rein to my complaint and speak out of the bitterness of my heart." And boy, does he. And that kind of starts this whole new pattern for the book of Job as we walk into this week reading completely in the book of Job, from Job chapter 17 through Job chapter 39. Again, I want to just encourage you as you dig deep into the book of Job. A lot of people will miss some days here. A lot of people will struggle through this, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Don't allow guilt and shame to come, but walk under the conviction and goodness of God. This is still a book of the Bible. This is still God's divine word to us, and there's still things that we need to see and understand about God and about mankind as we walk through this book of Job. So call each other, pray for each other as we walk through this book of Job together. It's going to be so good, guys. Just trust me. I'm enjoying walking through this difficult book, and I look forward to talking with you about it as we come together this next Sunday. Some of those main stories is really nothing new. We've already kind of seen what's going on in the book of Job. We see this back and forth for a while between Job and his three friends. They make statements about their own self-righteousness. Job makes statements about his own self-righteousness. One of the difficult things about Job is we see that even when his friends are talking and when Job is talking, we see some of the statements they make are correct, and some of the statements they make about God or about mankind are incorrect. And so one of the things that I've done in my Bible and in my journal is using different highlighters and different ink. And so maybe in your Bible, you might highlight those things about God which align with the truth that we know about God. Or you may take a different color and align those things about God which are not true. Those would be great for discussion when we come together this next Sunday. And so in the midst of this back and forth, this self-righteousness campaign, this declaration of goodness of self, and there's all kinds of accusations that are wrongly made about God. And we need to see those and understand that we are no different. One of the statements that some of my former teachers made is that every man can do what every man has done. And so Job, being the most righteous man in all the East in his day, makes some statements and accusations about God, and we are no different nor no better than Job. And so we too could find ourselves in moments of free rein to complaint and bitterness, of saying these same wrong and hurtful statements about God. Some of the statements look like this: that God overlooks justice, that God allows the wicked to get away with whatever they want, but he's so hard on his own covenant children. We later see King David in a psalm sort of says these same exact sentiments. And so we see the history of mankind kind of having this same thought of accusing God in our moments of hurt, pain, and fear and sadness, of overlooking right and just giving free rein to wrong. That is so incorrect about God. God is not like that. Job's friends incorrectly say that only the wicked suffer. They say that, hey, Job, clearly you were suffering because you're a wicked person who's turned his back against God. They start saying that very early, kind of probably to prop themselves up, using Job as a stair step to make themselves feel better about themselves. But that's clearly not true. We know that Job is under attack because Satan hates Job because he bears the image of God and because God has got good things in store for Job, which we hopefully will see at the end of this book. Job makes a very frightening statement about God in the midst of this book too. He says, God has wronged me. And we need to be very clear about this. God has never wronged anybody. He has never wronged any person, any animal, anything. God has always been perfect and holy towards all of his creation. If God has allowed it or God has done it, it has been right. And that will never change and has never changed. And so God has not wronged Job, but in his wrong sense and source of speaking, he makes this ridiculous statement. Job also says, I wish that God was like a man and that we could go to court and that we could face off face to face and that he would share with me what he thinks is wrong and I would share back with him why I'm right before him. An incredibly arrogant statement that Job makes in this spot. We get to chapter 32 of Job and we start to see a big transition right here. And we see this young man kind of sitting on the sidelines named Elihu. Elihu's name means he is my God. And Elihu's sitting there and he speaks up and he says, guys, I've been listening and I haven't spoken for a while because you guys are much older than me. And because you're older, I expected you to say some wise and correct statements. But kind of in the spirit of Jeremiah, who will come in just a few weeks, he's got this passion, this raging inferno of truth burning up inside of him, and Elihu can't take it anymore. And so Elihu comes on the scene and he rebukes Job's friends for their wrong accusations of God. He rebukes Job's friends because they can't defend what seems like the simplest of things that Job says. And he rebukes Job too, saying, Job, how dare you speak badly of my king? How dare you speak so highly of yourself and you decline or you push down God while you elevate yourself? And what's interesting is we don't see Job or his friends who have been in this tit for tat for a while. They never speak up against Elihu. They never say a word. They just sit here of this prophet, this young prophet of God who speaks out on God's behalf. And kind of this prophecy of Elihu speaking rolls right into chapter 38, where we see kind of this pinnacle of the book of Job. God shows up on the scene and God speaks for himself. It's interesting that the very thing that Job asked for, he got. He said he wishes that God would come and speak to him. And God comes and speaks to him and says, Job, stand up like a man and answer me. And just God lets him have it. And it's not in a cruel way, but God is clearly making it very clear to Job. This is who I am, and this is who you are. And we kind of wrap up our reading this week in chapter 39 of Job. I wish that we could sneak ahead to 42 to finish it out, but you'll finish out the book of Job this next Sunday. Don't feel bad if you want to read ahead. I might have done it myself. But one of the things I wanted you to see this week as we wrap up this video is even in the midst of speaking out of free rein to complaint and bitterness, and we do the same thing, and we give free rein to all sorts of bad things, and I'm not making light of those, but I want us to remember who it is that's done this. Job is a righteous man, the most righteous man in the East. And he is having moments of weakness, moments of temptation, moments of sadness, moments of self-righteousness, self-defense. And he's going back and forth between saying horrible things about God to wonderful things about God. Job is, in fact, a human, just like you and I. But one thing stood out in Job chapter 19, verse 25. Job makes this statement. He says, I know my Redeemer lives. And because he lives, one day I'll be with him and see him face to face. And that really is the sign of a person walking in the rebirth, in the new covenant that Job has, and that we, as being covenant people as well. You will go through moments where you make accusations of God, and God will convict you of those. He may even speak to you about those things. You will go through moments where you wrongly give free rein to things that you should not give free rein to in your life. But one of the core tenets of a person walking in covenant with their Redeemer, whom we know his name is Jesus, is that you will declare that because Jesus lives, because your Redeemer lives, that he is good and you will get to face him one day face to face and walk with him. Guys, I hope that you can hold on to the fact that your Redeemer, Jesus, lives, that he holds you close, he holds you dear, he loves you, he cherishes you. And regardless of what you walk through, whether it be consequences of your sin or God has given Satan permission to attack you, that you will cry out to him and ask him, why, God? Why? You were always good towards me. And because you were my Redeemer, because you love me, Can you show me so that I might be more like your son? Guys, stick with Job, read through Job, bring your questions, bring your insights. Let's come together as the church family this week as we get to celebrate the fact that we too are in covenant relationship with God because he loves us in the same way that he loved Job. Thank you guys for watching this video. I can't wait to see you on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock as we read through his word together. See you then. Thanks, guys. Bye.